The Gravedigger. The silence of deep space was sacred. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had ruled over 1,000 systems in peace, or what they defined as peace, iron-fisted order, constant surveillance, and brutal assimilation of any civilization foolish enough to resist. There had not been a real war in nearly 2 centuries. The Empire had crushed the last of the Outer Rim rebellions decades ago. Most of the species under its banner had forgotten what real defiance even looked like. So when the transmission came in from the Arcanist Border Patrol, grainy, distorted, and filled with static, it caused more confusion than concern. Unidentified vessel repeating, "This is Imperial space. State your allegiance or be static. I repeat, we have visual, it's not registering, gods help us. It's human." And then silence. Grand Strategist Valor Threx narrowed his eyes as he stood in the Imperial War Room, surrounded by the blue glow of floating holograms and blinking data nodes. The word echoed in his head like a long-forgotten curse. Human. That species had been wiped out, or so the records claimed. Earth had been classified as a dead planet, a toxic rock left to spin uselessly in its sun's orbit after the Empire's cleansing purge over 300 years ago. The humans had been primitive, defiant, reckless, and impossible to control. They had fought harder than any other species the Empire had encountered, not with strength or numbers, but with desperation, with fury, with spite. That's why they were erased. Vor ordered the full replay of the transmission. He listened to it 4 times. Each time that final word sent a chill down his exospin. His aide, a nervous green-scaled Zorian named Le, leaned closer. "Perhaps it's an old wreck drifting from a forgotten skirmish, a decoy even." Veller shook his head slowly. "No, the ship was moving deliberately and it returned no code. It isn't one of ours, it isn't even of this time." He turned to the surveillance holo. "Track its path, get me visual, full spectrum." What appeared on the display silenced the room. It was sleek, black, and scarred from battles long past. Its hull bore no insignia, only a deep gouge where something once might have been etched. No comms, no beacon, no signal. And yet it moved with purpose, gliding past Imperial satellites as if they were nothing. Its cannons were of an unknown make, primitive by modern standards. But there was something ominous about them, something ancient and angry. The AI of the ship was dead or dormant. No communication, no acknowledgement of warnings or threats, and worse, no life signs. "Scan it again," Veller barked. "We did," replied Le multiple times. "No crew, no atmosphere, no life. And yet it moves." The ship had crossed the border of the Tellan expanse and was now heading toward one of the Empire's core planets. It hadn't fired. It hadn't even veered off course. It simply moved as if on a mission from a forgotten god. That's when the panic began to ripple through the upper ranks. Not because of what the ship could do, but because of what it meant. History in the Empire was curated, sterilized. The rise of the Empire, the defeat of rebellion, the cleansing of Earth, these were taught as facts, proud moments of strength. But the older records, hidden even from many of the High Council, told darker truths. The humans hadn't been wiped out completely. A fleet had vanished. A fleet that included one experimental battleship built for vengeance, not victory, a last-ditch creation by Earth's dying coalition. It had been nicknamed Gravedigger. And now it was back. Veller stood still, his mind racing. "Tell the Council we have an incursion, know an omen, and find out what lies in its path." The aides scattered, but one lingered, terrified. What if it's not here to attack? Veller didn't look at him. "Worse," he said coldly, "what if it's here to remember?" The human battleship moved like a ghost, silent, steady, unstoppable. It drifted through one of the Empire's secure trade lanes now, passing colossal cargo haulers and sleek patrol craft that scrambled to clear its path. A convoy of merchant ships attempted to ping it with emergency codes, desperate for clearance or some sign of intent. The response was the same: nothing. It didn't need to speak. Its very presence screamed louder than any broadcast. In the command citadel on Veltra Prime, panic was no longer whispered. It was shouted in every corridor, written across the pale faces of ministers, admirals, and historians who thought they had buried the past. The footage was going viral within the Empire's classified networks. Someone had leaked the visual. And with every second it stayed on screen, the myth of human extinction began to unravel. Valor Threx stood at the center of it all, staring at a rotating image of the ship with clenched fists. His eyes, sharp and calculating, were filled with unease that he hadn't felt in decades. "What is its trajectory now?" he demanded. Liz, still trembling, replied, "It's on course to intercept a weapons research station on the outskirts of Vora 6. Veller's eyes narrowed. "Why there?" "That station is uninhabited, obsolete, decommissioned since the last quadrant purge." "Except," another aide spoke up hesitantly, "it's not entirely decommissioned. A skeleton crew maintains the AI archives stored in the core vault, experimental tech, human-related tech." There it was, Veller turned slowly. You're telling me we've been storing remnants of their technology, you idiots, you never learned. Protocol stated it was too valuable to destroy. For future analysis, the aide muttered. For future ghosts, Feller snapped, and now one of them has come knocking. On board the ship, though to call it that felt like an insult to what it was. The halls were dark, not because of malfunction but by design. The ship wanted to be dark. Its internal lights pulsed softly like a slumbering beast breathing slow and steady. Inside the command chamber, the walls were lined with what looked like bones but not human. Trophy bones, alien skulls from species across the galaxy, some extinct, some still thriving. It was a hunter's shrine or a warning. At the center, the only human left, Captain Elias Rohr, had been dead in theory for 312 years. Cryosleep had kept him preserved, but the tech had failed long ago. What had kept him alive was something else entirely, something the Empire had never understood: the ship itself. Gravedigger wasn't built with just steel and AI. It was built with fury laced into its very circuits, the dying breath of Earth's brightest minds, the wrath of mothers who had watched their cities burn, the pain of soldiers who had nothing left but vengeance. And Rohr had been the chosen soul to carry it. He stirred now for the first time in what felt like centuries. His breath came ragged as he blinked away the shadows of time. The console before him lit up with red symbols, Earth's old language lost to time. Target identified, Vora 6. He exhaled slowly, voice cracked and hoarse. Still here, huh? The ship vibrated gently beneath him, like a creature happy its master had returned. Thought we'd be dust by now, he muttered, but I guess some stories don't end easy. His fingers danced over the control panel, awakening systems that hadn't been touched in generations. Weapons began to hum, shields activated, engines flared with power so old it felt primal. The ship's AI, barely functional after centuries of corruption and slumber, still managed to speak. Mission priority, vindication. Rohr grinned bitterly. Not yet, first let's knock on their front door. Back on Veltra Prime, Veller's orders were immediate. All warships within 10 sectors scramble. I want everything in the air. This is not a test. He turned to his comms officer. Broadcast a demand, tell it to stop, tell it to surrender. They did, and the ship responded. A single signal transmitted on every Imperial frequency. Not in Galactic Common, but in Earth's old tongue, distorted, ancient, filled with static. You erased us, you lied, you forgot, we didn't. The room fell silent. Veller's heart thudded. This wasn't just a relic, it was a reckoning. The fleet reached Vora 6 before the battleship did. Dozens of cruisers orbited the forgotten moon station, forming a defensive grid thick enough to block out starlight. Fighter wings zipped between capital ships, scanning for heat signatures, weapon activity, anything that could give them an edge. Every gun was charged. Every missile was locked in standby. Inside the Imperial Dreadnought Justice's reach, Admiral Karen Dole watched the hollow void before them with clenched teeth. He'd fought rebels, smugglers, even pirates dumb enough to raid Imperial outposts. But this was different. He had reviewed the footage. He had heard the voice. He had read the redacted reports. It shouldn't be possible, he muttered. There shouldn't be anything left of them, we glassed Earth. Commander Varric beside him looked equally disturbed. Maybe we didn't glass it hard enough. They both turned towards the massive view screen as the human battleship appeared. No fanfare, no jump flash, no ripple in spacetime. Just there, crawling into view like a predator stepping into moonlight. The entire bridge held their breath. Even the AI monitoring their systems began to stutter, its predictive models failing to process the ship's configuration. It's targeting the station, someone whispered. No, Dole said slowly. It doesn't care about the station, it cares what's inside it. Orders, Admiral, Varric asked. He took a long breath. We don't wait, open fire. Within seconds, the stars lit up. Missiles screamed through the void. Beam weapons painted space with molten fury. Fighters swooped in with perfect formation. The barrage was relentless. And still the human ship did not fire back. Instead, it kept moving. And then it vanished. Not in a jump, not through cloaking. It blinked. A micro-warp centuries ahead of anything the Empire had. In a fraction of a second, it appeared behind the formation facing the dreadnought. Admiral Dole's eyes widened in disbelief. How? Gravedigger's guns came online. There was no bright flash, no drawn-out display of power, just a pulse, a single devastating energy discharge that hit Justice's reach dead center. The dreadnought cracked apart in silence, its hull folding like paper, its midsection imploding as its reactor failed catastrophically. The other ships tried to reposition, but the human battleship was gone again. Blink, 2 destroyers shredded. Blink, 4 fighters evaporated mid-maneuver, panic set in, formation collapsed, orders overlapped. Ships fired wildly into empty space, hopping to hit something anything, and still nothing touched Gravedigger. It wasn't just fighting, it was hunting. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Rohr felt no joy, no adrenaline, just a strange emptiness. This wasn't revenge. This was cleaning up the mess they left behind. His voice, rasped from disuse, echoed in the silence of the bridge. 300 years, he whispered, and they still think they're gods. The AI crackled softly, targets remaining 17. He pressed his palm to the console. They'll learn. Another blink, another kills. Below them, the Vora 6 station spun slowly, untouched so far, but it wouldn't be for long. Inside, Archivist Terrell 9, one of the Empire's most secretive data custodians, stood frozen as alerts flared across his workstation. The battle above lit up the skis, visible even from inside the reinforced structure. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't even a loyalist, he was a coward, and a coward's instinct screamed at him to run. But he didn't, because the door to the vault behind him had just opened. It should have been sealed, permanently locked with gene-coded encryption. Yet now it creaked open on its own, cold air spilling out like breath from a grave. Inside was a relic, a black cube etched with symbols that no one had ever fully deciphered. Human language, old Earth tech, the last known remnant of something they called the Black Archive. Most of the Empire believed it had been destroyed after the war. It hadn't. Terrell stared at it. A soft hum vibrated from its core. Lights pulsed along its surface, reactivated, not by accident. It had heard something, maybe the ship, maybe the man. Either way, it was awake now, and it was remembering everything. Above Vora 6, the fire had dimmed. Most of the Imperial fleet lay in ruins, torn apart with surgical precision. Only a few damaged vessels limped away, trailing sparks and debris, too crippled to even consider retaliation. The rest were reduced to wreckage, floating monuments to the hubris of an empire that had long believed itself untouchable. But Gravedigger did not pause to gloat. It drifted now, silent once again, above the research station like a looming shadow. Inside the vault, Archivist Terrell 9 backed away from the cube, his face drenched in sweat. The hum had turned into a soft tone, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. His translator implant struggled to parse the strange language rippling across the cube's surface. Not data, not warnings, names. Human names. Terrell didn't understand them, but he recognized the structure. A war roster. Someone or something was reactivating the last memory bank of Earth's fallen. The cube pulsed again, then a deep mechanical voice spoke. Primary Command Unit identified, Elias Rohr. Terrell's breath caught. That's the pilot. The voice answered as though it heard his thoughts. He is not pilot, he is remnant. Suddenly, the vault doors sealed shut behind him. Emergency lights snapped on, casting the room in crimson. Outside, the station's crew, barely a dozen technicians and researchers, scrambled for answers. Their attempts to contact the Empire failed. Their distress beacons were jammed, and then the human ship descended. It didn't dock, it merged. A long-forgotten airlock on the station's upper ring suddenly pressurized and opened, though none had touched the controls. What followed wasn't an army. No soldiers, no drones, just one man. Captain Elias Rohr stepped onto Vora 6 with the slow, deliberate walk of someone who had nothing left to fear. His armor was unlike anything still used in the galaxy, battle-worn, scorched, patched with ancient human tech. One of his eyes was cybernetic, flickering as it scanned the corridor. The other, dark, sunken, held the gaze of a man who had survived extinction. A technician stumbled backward upon seeing him. "We surrender," she cried. "I didn't come here for war," Rohr said, his voice gravel in smoke. "That part's over." "Then why are you here?" That's what her eyes asked. But he didn't explain. He walked the halls with familiarity, even though they'd been built centuries after Earth had fallen. Something in him, perhaps the ship, perhaps the cube, guided him. When he reached the vault, the door opened before him without prompt. Inside, Terrell 9 stood frozen beside the pulsing artifact. "You're him," the archivist whispered. "Elias Rohr, you're not supposed to exist." Rohr stepped forward, eyes locked on the cube. "None of us were supposed to." He placed a hand on it. The cube opened. It didn't break or crack or unfold. It simply bloomed, like petals of obsidian sliding away to reveal a core of swirling red light. Inside it, the truth. A hologram projected upward, grainy, unstable but real, Earth as it had been. Cities scarred by war, skies black with ash, children huddled in underground shelters, soldiers dying on soil that no longer grew life. And then the last recorded message from the coalition of Earth, a woman's voice firm despite the tremor of grief. If you're hearing this, we failed. We fought until our sun dimmed and our oceans choked. But we built a final answer, not to win, not to survive, but to be remembered. Eteral's knees buckled, gods. Roar didn't flinch, he had seen it all before. The message ended with coordinates, dozens of them scattered across the galaxy. Buried vaults, forgotten tech, hidden memories, evidence of humanity's truth, of their final stand, their resistance, their betrayal, and the lie the Empire told when it declared Earth cleansed. Roar turned toward the archivist. "You're going to help me transmit this to every system." Terrell stammered, "If I do, they'll kill me. The Council will wipe out this station, my family." "They already erased a planet," Roar said coldly. "You think they won't erase you next?" The cube pulsed beside him, its light spreading like fire through the vault systems. Already the transmission had begun. Quiet, unstoppable, like a virus of truth crawling through the Empire's veins. "They won't be able to stop it," Roar said. "Not this time." Terrell looked at the hologram again, the ash, the faces, the pain, and he nodded. The transmission spread like a virus. At first, it only hit low-level civilian networks, then commercial satellites, then internal military feeds. Within an hour, the holographic message from the cube was playing in transit hubs, planetary marketplaces, private residences, and even restricted council chambers. The people of the Galactic Empire, millions of species who had been taught for generations that humanity was a footnote, a failed mutation, a relic of resistance crushed under the Empire's heel, watched in stunned silence as the truth bled out before them. They saw Earth not as the wild, savage world they had been shown in propaganda, but as a place of desperate brilliance, a planet clawing against extinction, a people who refused to die quietly. They saw the children coughing under smoke-darkened skis. They saw the soldiers standing atop craters with makeshift weapons and iron resolve. They heard that final broadcast, a defiant whisper hurled across time. And then they saw the human battleship Gravedigger, not a legend, not a warning, a witness. In the Imperial Council chamber on Veltra Prime, panic had become chaos. Messages from governors, military leaders, and allied species came pouring in. Some demanded explanations, others demanded blood. A few wanted answers. Velerthrex stood alone at the center of the storm, staring at the hologram playing above the council table. "This was supposed to be sealed," he muttered. "We buried it. We cleansed it from the core files." Counselor Veg, her translucent skin twitching with rage, slammed a clawed hand on the table. "You lied to us. You told us they were primitive, that they died screaming in their bunkers, that there was nothing left." Avalur turned slowly, his voice low. "Because if I told the truth, none of you would have slept since." Another counselor stood, voice shaking. "Is it only one ship, or are there more we don't know?" "We don't know," Veller admitted, "but we know where it's headings." The map lit up, tracking Gravedigger's path as it left Vora 6. The next set of coordinates was already locked, a deep space vault near the edge of the Carney's Rift, Site 9, a facility so black it didn't even officially exist. The council chamber fell quiet. That's when the Emperor's voice rang out from above, mechanized, cold, projected from the throne hidden in the upper dome. "Mobilize the Ascendants, deploy all dread fleets, initiate burn protocols, that ship must not reach Site 9. Veller hesitated. "If we do that, the public will know, they'll understand what we tried to hide." "They already know," the Emperor said flatly. "Now we decide how many of them survive that knowledge." In the silence of space, Roar sat once again in Gravedigger's command chair. The transmission had done what it needed to. Now came the harder part. He stared at the blinking coordinates, hands still on the console. Site 9 wasn't just a data vault, it was the vault. The place where the Empire stored the worst truths, war crimes, censored technologies, evidence of mass extinction campaigns, including Earth's purge. He didn't need the cube to tell him that. He remembered it. He'd been there a long time ago when he was still flesh and rage and not the half-ghost thing he was now. Roar had helped steal the vault's location. He never made it there, not before the cryolock, not before the fall, now he would, but this time he wasn't going to sneak in. He was going to knock the damn door down. The ship vibrated slightly, sensors detecting something ahead. Anomaly warp spike incoming fleet. Roar leaned forward, talk to me. The AI, still half corrupted but functioning, responded. Fleet intercept calculated. Imperial Dread Fleet en route. Ascendant-class ships detected. Probability of survival 4.7%. Roar cracked his neck. Better odds than last time. The ship blinked forward, toward death, toward the truth, toward the vault they had all killed to keep buried. And behind him, the Empire scrambled, screamed, and panicked, because their worst nightmare had stopped being a myth and started becoming a martyr. The void ahead shimmered. Warp signatures peeled open like glowing scars across space, and from them the Empire's fury arrived. The Ascendants. They were legends in the Imperial Navy, ships the size of moons, powered by harvested singularities, commanded by AI-augmented warlords who had been fused into their vessels over centuries. Each one bore a name whispered in dread: Silent Judgment, Penance Unending, Light of Dominion. And now all of them pointed their guns at Gravedigger. Roar stood in the bridge, arms crossed, calm, no orders barked, no panic in his breath. He had known this was coming since the day he woke up. Let them come. The ship responded not with words, but with a slow buildup of internal systems. Ancient weapons surged back to life. Cannons that hadn't fired in over 300 years began to glow with a red energy that no scanner could identify. The AI spoke with its broken voice. Enemy vessels locked, doctrine override required, mission priority conflict. Forget the doctrine, Roar muttered. Override it, full combat authorization. We're not here to survive, we're here to be heard. Override accepted, vindication protocol engaged. In the distance, the Ascendants aligned. The Dread Fleet formed a kill net. No gaps, no escape routes. One ship, no matter how legendary, couldn't break through the Empire's apex predators. And yet Gravedigger did not flee. It accelerated straight into them. The first blast came from Silent Judgment, a beam weapon so powerful it warped space as it traveled. A direct hit. Any normal vessel would have been atomized, but Gravedigger wasn't normal. It blinked through the beam, its hull momentarily consumed in a wash of fire and raw gravity, and when it reappeared, it released a blast of its own. A weapon forged not for damage but for decay. A ripple of entropy surged across space, washing over one of the cruisers guarding the Ascendants. In an instant, its systems corroded. Its AI collapsed. The ship fell from the fleet like a corpse. Roar whispered to himself, almost in awe, they built this to be a message, not just a weapon. Then he shouted, all power forward, we're breaking their line. The ship obeyed. The Ascendants responded with everything. Torpedoes that could melt moons. Graviton cages meant to freeze time around a target. Data virus swarms meant to kill AI before it could think. None of it mattered because Gravedigger didn't fight like a warship. It fought like a wound in the Empire's memory. Blink, fire, blink, evade, blink, strike. Within minutes, one of the Ascendants was breached. An entire starboard section gone. Hundreds dead. AI screaming in fragmented binary as its core was ejected. But the damage was mutual. Inside Gravedigger, Roar stumbled as a blast rocked the spine of the ship. Panels burst, sparks fell like rain, the AI crackled, shield failure in sectors 3, 5, 7, primary armor buckling, life support compromised. Keep going, he said through clenched teeth. Just get me to Site 9. Another blast, this one tore through the aft section. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropped to critical. The ship's blinking slowed, its systems faltered, still it moved, still it clawed forward. The Ascendants began to reposition, preparing to surround and crush the ship in final unison. Then something changed. A new signal entered the system. A fleet, but not Imperial. Civilian craft, pirate raiders, smugglers, fringe militia, a ragtag assembly of vessels all broadcasting one thing, the human transmission. They had seen it, believed it, and in their own way joined it. One battered freighter screamed over the comms, voice shaking, "We don't know who you are, but if you're the ghost of Earth, they didn't erase you. You're still here." The Empire began to panic. Their net disrupted, their formation broken. And Roar, he smiled for the first time. Not because he was going to win, but because the lie was dying right here in fire and ruin. He activated the last drive sequence, the final push toward Site 9, toward the heart of the secret they'd killed billions to protect. The screen lit up. Impact course locked. Brace for crash penetration. As the ship burned, buckled, and screamed beneath him, Roar whispered, "Let them remember." The crash wasn't elegant, it wasn't calculated, it was vengeance with engines. Gravedigger tore through the outer perimeter of Site 9 like a god being hurled from orbit, its shattered hull peeled open on impact, fire trailing in a spiral of broken steel and bleeding circuits. The surface of the vault moon cratered beneath the force. Mountains collapsed, shock waves spread for miles. Inside what remained of the ship, Elia's Roar was half buried in wreckage. Ribs cracked, blood in his throat. Alarms screamed, the AI stuttered its last rites, core failure imminent, destruction in. He silenced it with a slap of his hand to the console. Not yet. His body protested every movement, but he pulled himself free. Sparks danced around him as he limped through the dying corridors. Fire licked the walls. Power surges snapped systems apart. The ship that had carried humanity's vengeance for 3 centuries was now little more than a burning tomb, but it had done its job, it had got him there. Roar emerged through a torn bulkhead into the open air of Site 9's upper sector. Security drones were already inbound, sirens wailing, turrets unfolded from rock and steel, defense AI activated with kill protocols. He raised his sidearm. A shot. One drone down, another, then 3, then 5, but more were coming. That's when the ship overhead opened fire, not the Empire, the fringe fleet. Civilian gunboats and pirate skiffs rained plasma on the surface, targeting the defenses, clearing a path. They didn't know who Roar was, but they knew what he represented. The Empire lied, and this man had come to bury their myth. Roar moved through the breach, down scorched corridors, past scorched signs and rotted banners that once bore the Imperial crest. Site 9 wasn't a data center. It was a crypt, a graveyard of forbidden truths. He reached the inner chamber. Vault Core 1A, the door was sealed with a triple-layered gene lock, uncrackable by modern standards. Roar didn't bother. He pulled a small device from his belt, an ancient Earth relic scavenged from the cube back on Vora 6. He jammed it into the console, a low hum, then override accepted. The doors slid open. Inside were banks of storage, each holding records never meant to be seen again. Mass extinction logs, Earth's final broadcasts, footage of the glassing campaigns not just of Earth but dozens of rebellious worlds. Evidence that the Empire hadn't maintained peace, it had butchered its way to it. And the worst of it, the cleansing of Earth hadn't even been a necessity. The final data logs proved that Earth had already begun peace negotiations when the strike order was issued. They had been erased for being remembered. Roar's hand shook as he stared at the hollows. This was it, the final nail in the Empire's lie. He looked to the console, still sparking from the crash impact. "Transmit it," he whispered. "Send everything, every planet, every station, every soul." He hit the command. The vault came to life. Waves of red-gold data surged into the sky, hijacking satellites, bouncing through relays, embedding themselves in systems far beyond this star. The Empire's spine shattered in real time. Worlds across the galaxy woke up to a flood of truth. Children who had recited Imperial history in school now watched footage of human cities burning under Imperial war cruisers. Veterans who thought they had fought a noble war saw footage of surrendered soldiers executed under false pretense. and in every single image, a flag, broken but still waving, stood tall. The Earth Standard. Back at Site 9, the AI in the core flared. Transmission complete, legacy unsealed, history corrupted. No, Roar whispered, history restored. He slumped to the ground, the last of his strength gone. Above him, ships still fought. But the real battle, the war for memory, had already been won. He closed his eyes, feeling the burning rubble tremble beneath him. And far above, for the first time in centuries, the Empire felt fear, not of death but of truth. The Empire didn't fall in a day. It fractured silently, like ice cracking beneath too much weight. In the days following the Site 9 transmission, chaos bled through every layer of control. Systems once loyal to the core began declaring neutrality. Some severed ties altogether. Others turned on local governors, dragging them into the streets under banners painted with Earth's symbol, not in reverence but in rebellion. The truth was no longer containable. Not when thousands of verified broadcasts confirmed it. Not when soldiers realized the medals on their chests were earned through lies. Not when historians suddenly found their archives overwritten with files they'd never been allowed to see. In the slums of Galvani Prime, a young boy stared at a hologram of Earth burning and whispered, "They were just like us." On the oceanic world of Cirrus Vel, a retired fleet commander wept quietly, watching footage of his ship firing on an unarmed colony. "They told us they were animals," he said over and over. "They told us they had to die." And on the throne world Veltra Prime, Emperor Kale Ixion watched his empire unravel in silence. His advisors panicked. His counselors begged for damage control, but he understood what they didn't. This wasn't a crisis. It was a reckoning. "They won't forget this," he said. Valor Threx, bruised and bloodied, stood beside him, haunted by the role he'd played. "No," he muttered, "and they shouldn't." At the crash site on Site 9, the dust was settling. Roar's body was found beneath twisted metal, still breathing, though barely. A fringe recovery team pulled him out. Pirates, smugglers, defectors who had turned on the Empire the moment they saw what he'd revealed. He awoke days later in a makeshift medbay aboard a stolen Imperial vessel. "You're lucky," the medic said, patching him with nanites and liquid bone. Roar winced. "Did it work?" The medic nodded. "You lit a fuse." Outside the viewport, friendships floated in formation. Thousands of them from dozens of species, now united not by trade or law but by purpose. Not to avenge humanity, but to make sure what was done to them never happened again. Roar stood still, aching but steadier now. There were more vaults, more truths. The cube on Vora 6 had given coordinates to them all. Earth might have died, but its will had not. "We're not done," Roar said, slipping back into his scorched armor. The smuggler captain who rescued him gave a low whistle. "What do we call you now?" Not many folks would follow a ghost. Roar thought for a moment. He didn't want titles, didn't need a name, but he knew what he had become. A reminder. Months later, in a classroom on a backwater colony once loyal to the Empire, a teacher switched off the standard lesson feed and played something else. A child raised her hand. "Is this about the humans?" Well, the teacher nodded. "Why did the Empire try to erase them?" The answer wasn't written in any official text, so the teacher said the only thing that felt true, because they wouldn't kneel. The screen lit up with an image, grainy, battle-worn. A black battleship floating through fire, and a broken flag still waving above the ruins of Earth.